will largely reflect our own. Thank you for the well-wishing, brother. I'll check in with you tomorrow. I am Chris Cuomo. Welcome to Prime Time. Tonight's show is going to be a little different, but the priority remains. Reality has set in all the way to the president. Brace yourselves, not for a hoax, but for the next few weeks of
YouTube の
scary
皆さんおはようござい
and
ます。
painful realities. The government is saying we need to keep doing what we're doing. The data shows
どうぞ
our
よろしくお願い
mitigation
いたしま
efforts
す。
are working. The reality, we are our best and perhaps only defense. If you need a death toll, you will get it every day, and it will frighten you. 4,000 already, maybe 100,000, 250,000. Trumped up today by this president, potentially saying it could have been millions. My suggestion, don't get caught in the numbers. Why? They're just scary, and they're out of context. We do not have the testing data to make real sense of our reality beyond what we know is the face of it for an overwhelming number who get sick. And that face is mine. I tested positive. Scary, yes, as you might imagine, but better me than you. My concern is what I may have put on my family, just like you would. That is hurting me way more than anything a virus can do. So let's focus. Let's use this example of me having it as proof that you can get it too. God forbid. We have to do everything we can to avoid being sick. We have to do it for ourselves, our families, and for those on the front lines who are saving the lives of people like me and many of you. Together as ever as one. That is our remedy. What do you say? Let's get after it. Now look, I feel fine. I'm able to do the show. You do not want this. And I am not able to be there for my family right now in the way that I want to be. And I still have to see if I got any of them sick. And you can understand how sickening that is to me as a husband and a father. And yet, I'm hesitant to talk about me because who cares? This is so small compared to what so many are facing. And we're going to all go through this together. You're going to have stories like mine popping up all over you and your life. You probably do already. Why? Because testing is just starting to catch up and pulling back the curtain on what we've known to be true for so long. It's not if, it's not even when. We are in it. This is a fight. It's going to get worse. We're going to suffer. And you have to accept that not with fear, but with almost a fanatical sense of passion to fight. Because that's the only way you've ever made it through anything hard in your life. And this will be no different. Let me be proof. We have real vulnerability. You are not too strong. Do not act that way. But show that vulnerability by what you do for yourself and for others. And not just health-wise, but economically, the toll this is taking. How many people do you know who are worried about losing a job? Or who have lost their job, and are not sure about how to get food on the table? Everyone gets it now. Trump even has forgotten ever questioning the hard reality. There is no more hoax. He's worried, and he should be. So let's move past this idea of fear to fact. What do they need us to do? What is working? What do we have questions about? What remains? For that, there's no one better than Dr. Sanjay Gupta. It's good to see you, brother.
Hey, Chris, man, I feel for you. I know you well. I know you're saying you feel okay, but you look a little under the weather, and I'm sorry, brother. I know you well, and I'm sorry that you're feeling that way.
Well, I probably don't look great because I have coronavirus. I think that, once we clear that up, that's what it is. And look, I'm a fighter. Most of us are going to be fine. I'm okay with that. There's so many who are so much more vulnerable, and there's so many people, as you know, sacrificing themselves every day to fight for the weakest among us. So what they did today, extending it, they seem to be pretty soft about it. You and I both believe we got to be looking at April or May in order for this to work in a way where we can combat it with our existing capacity. What are they saying now? How much does it square with reality to you?
Well, look, I mean, these models that everyone's talking about where they're saying, maybe 100,000 people would die. And that's sadly, a best case scenario, Chris. One of the things you got to keep in mind when they look at those models, they're actually talking about maintaining these measures until the end of May. Right? So right now they were saying end of April, but even in the best case scenario, you would extend it at least till the end of May. It also means that within the next few days, every state in the country would be doing that. not all the states in the country are doing this right now. And if some states don't, that affects all of us, Chris. I mean, as we've said for a couple of months now, how you behave affects me, how I behave affects you. That is still true. We've never been more dependent on each other, and yet there are some people who probably aren't still abiding by this. They don't see the severity of it. It hasn't affected them directly. Maybe after, hearing that you've tested positive, maybe people will behave differently. I don't know. But those models are just that, and they're really contingent on the fact that from here on out, every state in the country is really serious about these social mitigating measures. Not easy. I mean, it's tough. It's really tough.
But what do you say
but
to the people who are in a low-density area and they want to work and they can work and they don't see the case numbers? They're not New York. They're not New Jersey. They're not the coasts. They don't have the same risk factors. And there's so much pressure to not crash the economy. How do you convince those people that they need to do what isn't necessary now because it may be necessary later? That is not a uniquely American instinct.
No, it's not. And look, I mean, I get no joy in having to say some of these things, but, we've been sort of looking at this for several months now. I spend a lot of time looking at these models, and, I'm not the only one saying this. Here's what I would say. A week and a half ago, Michigan was saying that they had 15 cases. They said maybe we dodged this thing, and now they're well over, 1,500. Louisiana, sort of the same thing. Hey, maybe this is going to bypass us altogether, and now they're considered a hotspot in New Orleans. Sadly, this is a virus that is circulating around the country. Virus doesn't care where you live. It does care to the extent that if you're in a densely populated area like New York, maybe you're going to see these numbers earlier. But I think if you listen closely to what public health officials have been telling us, and Chris, I think this is interesting. I think even as you listen to these press conferences and everything, I think they don't want to jar the country with some of what's happening now. And I'm not suggesting that we need to jar the country, but the reality is this, that I think every state in the country is in some way following the same curve as you've seen in New York. New York's just earlier on the curve for the reasons we just mentioned. It's going to happen. We can do something about it. There is an end. If you act now, you're probably going to reduce the impact from a public health standpoint and an economic standpoint later. I know it's hard. It's like individual, like I tell you to eat right and exercise, and then you don't have a heart attack. And was it because I ate right and I exercised, or was it I wasn't going to have a heart attack anyways? How do you prove a negative here? That's the challenge, I think, for a lot of people, but it doesn't make it any less important.
Well, let me sharpen focus a little bit. I'll tell you what's scary about this that I didn't realize until basically today. I've never had anything where you cannot control the suck. Even when I've had like the flu, you got the Tamiflu, you took the vaccine, it kind of mutes it. You catch it early with the Tamiflu, it goes good. They give you some of those antivirals, they can work. And it is scary, Sanjay, to have people say to you two things. One, the real answer is suck it up. Stay home, stay away from your family, hydrate, take Tylenol if you need it. That's all we got until you're an extremist. That's scary. And then the second scary thing is then everybody gives you a million things to take. Anti-malarial, Z-Pack, the hydrochloroquine, which the president made very popular with people, all right? Everybody's saying that it works so well and that there are all these other drugs that you can take to keep it from your lungs. Do we know anything even close to definitively where you would feel comfortable telling your friend, Chris, let's go with it? Your cough is getting worse. I think it's worth the risk of taking this. Do we have anything like that right now?
Well, can I just say on the first point, Chris, I'm sorry you're going through this, really. I mean, I really feel for you. It's not good. It's a serious thing, and you're a tough guy, but I know it really makes people feel miserable. So I'm sorry you're going through this. There aren't any proven medications right now, and look, people will say, hey, look, I mean, if it's not proven, but maybe it works in a situation like this, should we do it anyway? Let me take one of the examples, hydrochloroquine and the Z-Pack, essentially, one that a lot of people have heard about recently. The president's talked about it. A lot of doctors have talked about it. I should point out a couple things. One is that we don't have the evidence that it works. Evidence is important here for a couple reasons. First of all, the studies that they did, there were people who weren't counted in the study. They started the study, they weren't counted in the final conclusions, but some of those people got quite sick despite taking the medications. And when you do the math on this very small study of some 20 people, it didn't necessarily show benefit. You've got to trial this out in larger populations. The French doctor who actually was the author of that study came out today and said, look, I want to be clear. I never wanted to recommend that people just start medicating themselves with this. And by the way, if you do, you should get an EKG ahead of time. You should monitor your potassium ahead of time. There could be some significant side effects. I mean, last thing we want to do to anybody, Chris, yourself included, is cause some sort of harm. That's why you do trials. I wish it worked. I wish we could say it worked and we knew it for sure. And then I would say my pal Chris could take this and he could, it could help him reduce the severity and the duration of this virus. But can't say that for sure. That's one of the most common ones. Remdesivir is another one, Chris, you may have heard about. Yeah. That one is supposed to block the replication of the virus, slow it down. It was trialed in Ebola and it was trialed in MERS. It was never approved for those. A lot of enthusiasm about it. People have heard about these anti-AIDS drugs. Those are probably the most promising. Those trials were started right after, a week after first patient was diagnosed in China. And people said, hey, we got it. These are the drugs that are going to work. And you know what, Chris, 2 weeks ago, final study came out and said they didn't work. That's why you do these studies. There's going to be something. We just don't know what it is yet.
And we do know that the one thing is the prevention. And that if you stay away from people, your chance of getting it is so much less. And then you don't have to deal with the unknown. And it's as simple as that. And that's the only reason. Look, I wasn't going to have this and not tell people. Because I'm not going to tell people that they got to be straight about this. I don't care how people live their lives ordinarily. But this is bigger than your own personal choices. So this is not where you want to be. I mean, look, my basement is great. It's not going to be hardship, but I can't go hug my kids. I can't be with my family. I can't go out and get anything for them. And I don't know what's going to come next. I don't know if the tightness in my chest is a function of the virus or because I'm so pissed off at myself that I'm not able to take care of what I want to take care of. And I want people to avoid that. And the bittersweet thing is, Sanjay, they can avoid it.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, we have data that shows what can decrease the likelihood of this continuing to spread, which can hopefully avoid some of these worst case scenarios in this country. But Chris, can I just ask for a second, just because of what you just said? I mean, there are some things that are worth probably getting checked out. For most people, they're not going to need to go to the hospital. It's going to be a tough, period that they recover from this illness, but they're going to, as you said earlier, going to be okay. But there are a few things that sound sometimes concerning. One is that if your shortness of breath is getting worse, you just mentioned tightness in your chest. I mean, we don't have to do it right now, but I'm going to call you. I'm going to ask you more about that. But tightness in the chest, pressure in the chest, especially if it's getting worse, those are things that I worry about. Obviously, if you're developing any evidence where you're not getting enough oxygen, you feel like you're losing your sensorium, your consciousness, or you got blue lips or anything like that, those are obvious ones. Those are things that should take you to the doctor. Most people aren't going to need it, Chris, but I want to make sure,
trouble breathing,
especially given that you might have
persistent pain or pressure in the chest.
I want to make sure that we leave people with the right impression that there are situations that need to get checked out.
Yeah, look, I mean, this is scary. At the same time, I know you heard what I said at the top of the show. I'm not diving into the numbers, man, because I know we're playing catch up. And people are getting freaked out by these exponential jumps in the numbers, and it was always going to happen. And the only number I'm going to argue later in the show that matters is one. It's what you choose to decide, what I choose to decide, and who we do it for. That's the only number that's going to matter. Everything else is just going to scare the heck out of you, and there's nothing you can do about it. I'll talk to you whenever you want. I don't want to take up your time because you're being so helpful to so many people. You are the best of us, and I can't tell you.
We love you, Chris. Feel better.
I can't tell you how good people have been. Even the ones who hate me are being so nice, and that is a beautiful thing, and that shows our capacity to be much more powerful than any virus. Sanjay, I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for helping me out, brother.
Stay close. You got it.
All right. Not too close. I don't want to get him sick. The man overseeing one of America's newest coronavirus hotspots says he is only getting a fraction of what he is asking for. We have to stay on this because this is one of the blurry things, and it can't be blurry. We have to shine a light on it. We got to be blunt about it. We've got to be aggressive about it. Illinois' governor says a big shipment did arrive, but it had the wrong masks. Is that true or not? What does it mean for him going forward? How does it get fixed? The governor. Straight talk. Next.
ということで、クオモ本人の話が終わったんで、音を切りますが、画像は流しっぱなしにしとくけどね。多分ツイキャスまだダメですよね。ね、多分ツイキャスダメね。一回 OBS 切ろうかな。YouTube の人も一回落ちますね、僕ね。2分後ぐらいに戻ってきます。